When a reclusive millionaire returned home early from an overseas trip, he never expected to fall to his knees in the hallway, overwhelmed with guilt and heartbreak. What he saw shattered him. For years, he thought he had it all: money, power, prestige. But what he'd entrusted to someone else revealed what he had truly lost. He had built a palace, but somewhere along the way, he had lost his home. Elliot Greystone was the kind of man people read about in financial magazines or saw on television panels discussing the future of the economy. A self-made millionaire many times over, Elliot had climbed from humble beginnings, selling refurbished computer parts in his parents' garage, to building an empire rooted in tech innovation, real estate ventures, and international shipping logistics. But with every triumph came personal cost. His wife, Mary Ann, a schoolteacher with a heart as radiant as her laughter, had been his anchor. She grounded him when the world praised him too loudly. Tragically, a sudden aneurysm had taken her away one quiet evening, leaving behind a void too massive to fill. Elliot had tried to cope, but between shareholder meetings and endless business trips, the grief began to rot in silence. Their children, Daniel and Emma, just 9 and 6 at the time, were the last pieces of Mary Ann he had left. But they were also daily reminders of what he'd lost. Every giggle from Emma sounded like Mary Ann's laugh. Every question from Daniel mirrored her curiosity. Overwhelmed and emotionally distant, Elliot turned to professionals. He hired elite nannies and top-tier housekeepers with pristine resumes and glowing references. But each failed in one way or another. Some were too strict, others too disengaged. The children grew quieter. Daniel stopped drawing. Emma, once endlessly energetic, barely spoke. Then, a chance lunch meeting with his old college friend and investor, Martin Langford, changed everything. Martin spoke fondly of the woman who had helped raise his 3 boys on his vineyard upstate. "Try Clara Mayhew," Martin had said, sipping his wine. "She's not from your world, Elliot. But she understands family better than anyone I know. Strong hands, stronger heart." Elliot was skeptical. A farmer in his sleek, ultra-modern mansion. But desperation and a spark of hope made him reach out. Clara arrived 2 weeks later. She came with a small duffel bag, a weathered Bible, and a tin of cookies she had baked that morning. In her late 50s, with lines etched into her skin like poetry from years in the sun, she radiated calm and quiet wisdom. Her voice was steady. Her steps deliberate. To everyone's surprise, especially Elliot's, the children instantly gravitated toward her. Within weeks, the sound of laughter echoed through the marble hallways again. Clara didn't just manage the household. She breathed life into it. Daniel started drawing again, this time with Clara kneeling beside him. Emma insisted on helping in the kitchen, flour dusting her cheeks as she mixed pancake batter. Clara never scolded them. She guided gently, teaching through stories and smiles. Meanwhile, Elliot dove deeper into his work, unaware of the slow miracle happening at home. Clara brought more than warmth. She brought balance. Each morning began with routine, homemade breakfast, a garden walk, and reading time. Screens were limited. Instead, Clara introduced board games, backyard scavenger hunts, and storytelling under the stars. Despite the mansion's luxurious features, a full theater, smart home tech, and an indoor gym, it was the handmade birdhouses in the garden, the patchy but thriving vegetable bed, and the painted rock pathway that the children cherished most. Daniel, once glued to his tablet, spent hours outside helping Clara. He learned to hammer, measure, plant, and water. Emma, too, bloomed. She wrote songs about bees and danced barefoot in the grass. The household staff noticed it too. One of the longtime maids, Rosario, whispered one day, "It feels like Miss Marianne is back," but through Clara. Still, Clara carried a deep, silent wound. Every night, when the house was still, she would take out a worn letter and read it under her breath. A photo of a boy, barely 10, lived inside her drawer, her son, Nathaniel. He had died in a farming accident decades ago. The guilt never left her. Watching Daniel reminded her of him. Every hug, every giggle, was a whisper from a past she never shared. Elliot, though physically absent, occasionally called the kids. The calls were short, distracted. He'd ask if they were eating well, doing homework, behaving. Clara never interrupted, though sometimes, when the kids waved goodbye to the screen, she'd sigh. And then came the Thursday that changed everything. Elliot was supposed to be in Tokyo for another 3 days, securing a multi-million-dollar merger. But a typhoon diverted his plans, and after a frustrating boardroom fallout, he decided to return home unannounced. He wanted silence, solitude, a place to regroup. What he got was a truth too loud to ignore. He arrived just after 11:45 p.m. The rain tapped gently on his coat as he entered his estate. Expecting a quiet house, he was surprised to hear music, faint and melodic. Curious and slightly irritated, he followed the tune. In the warmly lit kitchen, he found Clara seated between Daniel and Emma. They wore paper crowns and pajamas. On the table sat bowls of chicken noodle soup, slices of apple pie, and hand-drawn cards. Emma clapped her hands. "Daddy!" Clara threw a tooth party. "My tooth fell out." Elliot blinked, stunned. "What's going on here?" he asked, his tone more strained than intended. Clara calmly stood. "She lost her tooth. We celebrated." They were too excited to sleep. Elliot's eyes scanned the kitchen. Drawings of family picnics. A calendar full of events, camping, painting days, Clara's apple pie night. But no mention of him. Not one. He noticed a photo tucked near the fridge. A boy. Not Daniel. "Who is this?" Clara's voice softened. "My son. Nathaniel. He passed years ago. You live here. You've raised my children. Why didn't you tell me?" She folded her hands. "You never asked." The words hit like thunder. Elliot sat down, overcome. Guilt surged. How had he become so blind? At sunrise, Elliot found Clara in the garden, pruning tomato vines. He joined her silently, then broke the stillness with an apology. "I thought I was doing what was best. By providing. By building. But I was never really here." Clara nodded. Children need time, not treasures. That morning, he canceled meetings. For the first time, he made breakfast, burnt toast and scrambled eggs. The kids laughed. And Clara smiled. Elliot began changing. Slowly. Genuinely. He adjusted his work schedule to be home more. He learned how to plant in the garden, read bedtime stories, and even attended Emma's school play dressed as a dancing tree. He offered Clara a large raise. She refused. Just keep showing up, she said. He began journaling. Therapy followed. And with each passing week, Elliot transformed from a provider to a father. He also invited Clara's estranged daughter, who lived in Oregon, to visit. They had drifted after Nathaniel's death. Through gentle persistence, Clara and her daughter began rebuilding. Years passed. The house aged, but beautifully, covered in ivy, with worn garden stones and tree carvings made by small hands. 10 years later, Emma stood on the stage of her graduation. Valedictorian. Confident. Radiant. Her voice rang clear. To Miss Clara, who reminded us that dirt under the nails means something beautiful is growing. And to my dad, who chose us, eventually. You both gave me roots and wings. The audience applauded. Clara wept. Elliot, now semi-retired, clutched her hand. He didn't just build a company. He built a legacy of love. And as the sun set behind them, over the garden they had grown together, Elliot finally understood what wealth really meant. It meant presence. It meant healing. It meant coming home. The end.